What's going on, everyone? Welcome into Around the Felt, a special edition tonight. We have our first reoccurring guest on Around the Felt Sports History. Joining us tonight is multi-time FCS All-American, the former Patriot League Offensive Lineman of the Year at Holy Cross, 2024 All-Big Ten honorable mention as a Michigan State Spartan, and 2025 NFL Draft prospect, Luke Newman. Luke, automatically Around the Felt Sports Hall of Fame. We're pumped that you're on the show again, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic, guys. I mean, this is phenomenal being back here, man. It's been almost a year now, and, it feels like we never left, so let's get it going.
Yeah, feels like we never left. It's crazy it's been that long, and I'm sure your schedule's been wild leading up to the draft, so I really appreciate you taking the time to hop on. But before we get to all the draft talk, and we're looking forward to it, we want to touch on the Michigan State Spartan season last year, and for you personally, I'm curious, how different was it playing in the Big Ten? Did you feel like throughout the season you kind of maybe proved something to yourself or to others, or did it not really feel different at all? Just ball is ball.
It certainly felt different at first. I'll never forget, running out there that first Friday night against FAU, man. Like that was a lifetime dream of mine, man. Like all surreal sorts of emotions kind of just rushing through me, man. And, it took me a minute to realize, like, I got a game to play here. We got to lock back in. But, man, that was awesome. And, throughout the year, whether we played, Prairie View or Oregon, I definitely felt myself throughout the year grow exponentially as a player and as a person. Like, when you're in these NFL draft interviews, teams ask you, like, what are some of your better games? My better games weren't until later in the year, when we play Iowa, Michigan, weren't some of those earlier games where I'm just trying to find my footing, being a Big Ten offensive lineman, just trying to, find my way and, in this new playbook, this new position, this new everything, man. And, it was really good to see kind of like that growth, week by week. And, it's very rewarding. And, luckily it's gotten me where I am now.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So you grew up rooting for Sparty. So what did it mean for you to represent Michigan State for a season? And what was your favorite takeaway from that season?
Everything, man. Like wearing the green and white has been, a lifelong dream of mine. Unfortunately I would have loved for it to happen coming out of high school. Cards didn't fall that way. Took a different route, but in the end, the end goal was the same, and it ended up working out somehow. And that's a badge of honor I'll wear for the rest of my life, man. Wearing that green and white, and I couldn't have imagined having a better last season of college than playing in East Lansing.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you guys had your fair share of injuries on the offensive line as well last season. So how were you guys able to kind of battle through that together as an offensive line group?
It was tough, man. Like, going into that, season, we were already a little depleted on the offensive line. We just had a guy transfer out in that spring. A lot of inexperienced guys coming up to play, and, we weren't quite sure how it was going to happen. And obviously, through the first 3 weeks of the game, we lose 2 starting right guards, which brutal hit, man. But, we just kind of found a way. We ended up, taking that on the chin. Obviously it was tough, but, we put the best 5 out in the field the rest of the year. And, you could see the progression certainly throughout the year. And it was, it had its moments where it wasn't as promising as we would have liked it to be, man. But I know that right now coming into the spring, having gone to East Lansing a couple of times since to kind of see those guys, playing spring ball and, along with the addition of some of those transfers, man, they're coming along, man. And, you could just tell they grew so much from that year, and they're going to be so much better for it, come this fall.
Hey, as a diehard Spartan here, I am more than happy to hear that. And that was something I was going to get into as well a little bit later. I was going to ask you, how are you feeling about the future of this program right now?
Oh, phenomenal, man. Like, I went up to East Lansing about 2 weeks ago, got to see all those guys, the transfers, Matt, going to be the starting center for us this fall, the transfer from Wake Forest, man. He's awesome, man. He's a leader. He's a dog. Like he's, uber talented player, man. Like I couldn't, have thought of a better guy to lead this team out, in this 25 season. And, Stanton, the left tackle, young guy, like me trying to find his way throughout last year. You could see the growth out of him as well. And, being there Saturday, man, he's loud. He's a prick out there on the field. Like he's just completely changed from the last time we were kind of playing together. And he's really filling in as a leader, man. And the rest of those guys too, coming back from injuries, Christian Phillips, Gavin Brocious, they're looking good. Ashton Lepo, he's going to be coming back. But man, I'm super excited about those guys, man. And I know Aiden's going to be real glad about, last year coming into this year, the difference he's going to see out of his five protectors up front.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Let's go out there and let's try to get at least 6 bowl eligible, and I'll be a happy man for next season.
Absolutely, man.
I'm glad you brought up Aiden because, we've had Aiden on the show. Huge fan of his. It seemed like he really improved over the second half of the season, and it seemed like each week he got better. Was there a moment that you felt like it kind of clicked for him, and what gives you confidence for him heading into next season? Because we're insanely excited for what he's going to do heading into 2025.
Absolutely. I think the game that really clicked for him and really everyone that year, was Iowa. He was just on it that game, man. And
yeah, for sure.
We had a bye week coming out of that into that game, so that played a huge part in it, man. But you could just see he was, just oozing confidence in that game, man. Like it was unreal to see, man. Like it seemed like he couldn't miss, and I think he threw one pick in that game. I'm sure he would have liked to have that one back, man. But you could just see like he's making smarter decisions with the football. He's playing years beyond his age, and he was really coming along, man. I was super excited to see him progress throughout the year, and I'm even more excited, man, to see what he does this year. I wish I could be there to see it up close in person again, but man, I just know he's going to have an awesome year.
He certainly has all the tools, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you were obviously like a safety blanket for him. I mean, you had a career low in sacks allowed. I mean, according to PFF, you didn't even allow 1 sack this year, and I was looking every year your sacks allowed total has gone down. So, I mean, you were doing your part in keeping him upright this season. You want to talk about what changed in your game?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are definitely a couple times I got a little in trouble there, but Aiden, he's mobile, he's an athlete. He kind of saved me once or twice, man. But man, it's just a credit to that offensive staff and Coach Michalczik, the offensive line. Like they really, got me ready for this moment playing in the Big Ten and against this competition. And I owe it all to those guys, man. Like it was nothing really on my part. Like these coaches are just phenomenal at player development, and they're a rarity. You see nowadays in college football. You're looking for guys in the portal who are already developed and just come in, plug and play right away. And these guys, obviously adapting that portal mindset, everyone kind of has to. But man, they're huge on growing guys from within. And you even saw it at Oregon State, man, how successful they were on the offensive line. Like NFL coaches come and talk to me, and they know Coach Michalczik just by watching Oregon State film and just seeing how they play and seeing how Michigan State played this last year. And I know next year and, years from now, they're going to be raving about, just how Michigan State plays as an offense, especially on that line.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to circle back a little bit to this past season because I know you played against a lot of tough fronts and some incredibly talented players on the defensive line for multiple different teams. So which of those fronts, in your opinion, was the toughest to go against?
That's tough. I think, Oregon in some ways for, not only the talent they had up front, but what they were going to throw at you. And, I think a lot about Ohio State as well, who, wasn't a huge, didn't have a deep blitz package, in kind of like their scheme, but they just kind of go up there and, they're just looking to win all their matchups one-on-one. Those guys were really good. Oregon did a lot, and they were good at some of it. Sometimes they got kind of beat for it, but I would say those two fronts kind of go hand in hand for me. Like, obviously, Michigan's was very good. I think at times in that game, that defensive corner kind of misused some of their better talent in a way that maybe I wouldn't have. But Oregon and Ohio State for sure. Those guys have, first-round talents on that line, good coaching to back it up. And those are some good challenges for our O-line this year.
Now,
Yeah.
while we're on that same question real quick, is there a specific player you had to match up against that you would say was the toughest you had to face all season?
I definitely say Mason Graham was one of those tougher ones. He's not a big person by any means, but he's quick, he's twitchy, he's great with his hands. Really something you need to be good at the next level. Everyone's a hand fighter. You need to be good at that. I think other guys who were very good, Jamari Caldwell from Oregon. He's a short, stout guy, a day 3 kind of projection this year, I believe. But he's plays really good with leverage. He's a short guy, but real powerful too. I kind of go back on those guys being 1A, 1B for me.
I got to follow up too. So I know, particularly with Mason Graham, like the big knock on him is his arm length. And for you, when you're blocking someone, like you said, Graham's not the biggest guy. He doesn't have the longest arms, but he's so quick, right? How big of an impact is it, the arm length of the defender that you're going against, right? Because Graham, you mentioned, is the number 1 guy, but he doesn't have that arm length. Like, can you tell the difference?
Like, honestly, when you're in the heat of the moment, not really. Like the big neck on me kind of going into this whole, NFL's draft process, as well as my arm length too. Like we're pretty similar in that aspect, around 31.5, 32-inch arms. And, scouts and, analytics people will make a huge deal out of it. Like, but GMs, coaches know, like, it all kind of goes out the window at a certain point. It matters to a degree when you're a defensive end or a tackle, but on the interior, man, it's about just athleticism, moving your feet side to side, covering people up, man, winning the hands inside. And, sure, guys have a distinct arm advantage too, but, I'll take Yaya Black for an example. He's an Iowa nose tackle, huge guy, 6'5", like 34-inch arms, like massive person. But like, blocking Mason Graham was far more difficult than blocking him, just because Mason's able to move in tight spaces and use his hands real well. And, sure, Yaya Black has the length aspect to it, but it's all about just how you use your arms. Like those people who have those long arms and are great at using their hands, those are like your all pro type caliber guys, and that match that athleticism, and lateral quickness as well. But, it honestly, for me, it hasn't mattered much. Like, you don't really feel it. Like, if you look at any plays I lose this year, you're not going to say it was because of, his arms were half an inch shorter. So,
yeah, no, 100%. It's just that time of the season where you're looking at prospects and gym shorts and measurables, and at the end of the day, the tape doesn't lie, right?
Yeah. And coaches will say, like, the coaches I've talked to on visits, Ben Johnson, D'Amico Ryan, they just want football players, man. Like they don't, like even when I was in Detroit, working out for them at their local day, Brad Holmes gave a huge speech about, Brian Branch didn't have the best 40 number, but he had the best, position workout that he's ever seen. And so, people just look for ball players at the end of the day, like who could just go out there and play. And, having long arms is nice, but it's a rarity. You find guys who are extremely skilled at their position and have the size to match it.
So while we're on this topic, your relative athletic score, 9.69 out of 10. That is 55 out of 1,730 offensive guards since 1987. So maybe you don't have the arm length, but you have the athleticism that they're looking for. I mean, is there anything you do to help your athleticism, like for an offensive guard to have that much flexibility and movement skills? Like it's very impressive.
Absolutely. Had a chance to train down in Fort Myers, Florida for a couple of months, get ready for all of that. And, my place at X3 Performance down there was phenomenal working with me. I knew 2 guys the year before from Holy Cross that went through it. Both had phenomenal numbers, phenomenal days. And I didn't need to look any further than there. And so, it was stuff I knew I could do. Definitely needed some touching up on some techniques and, spend more time in the weight room, prioritizing some of the, explosive tests that you're really doing, like broad and vertical. But, it's always been one of my strong suits, being an athlete. You got to make up for, your lack in length somehow. And, being an athlete in space is one way to do it for sure.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you actually. So you mentioned your former teammates from Holy Cross. I was going to ask if you've had anyone to talk to / get advice from throughout this whole process.
Yeah, so big guy I talked to throughout the year was CJ Hansen. He was a right guard for us at Holy Cross. Went in the 7th round last year to the Kansas City Chiefs. One of the last 10 picks I think in the draft, and went through camp, made the 53-man roster. And I've just been talking with him, occasionally throughout the year, man. Like he's had such a wild experience, man. Like he blocks Chris Jones every day in practice. He gets coached by the great Andy Reid. Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes say hi to him every day. He's even told me he's met Taylor Swift out at Patrick Mahomes' Christmas party. So he's made the Super Bowl. Obviously didn't win it. I would have really loved for him to do that, but man, he's had a phenomenal rookie year, and I can't say my experience will be the same. I don't think I'm meeting any Taylor Swifts in the next couple months, maybe, but we'll see. So he gave me an idea of kind of what to expect throughout this process. We have the same agent, we went to the same All-Star game, so it's been similar in some aspects, but obviously quite different in others. I think we're kind of going back and forth. I think his relative athletic score was only a couple decimals higher than mine, so I think he's got me beat in that. But I asked him what to expect on draft day too, because I was at his draft day last year. He had an idea that he might go 5th or 6th. He thought the Arizona Cardinals were going to draft him, and the team that ended up drafting him ended up being one of the very few teams he hadn't even talked to in this process. And so I thought that was pretty crazy, and obviously worked out extremely well for him. But that just goes without saying. You don't know what to expect, and we're about a week away from this all kind of going down. And I couldn't tell you how it's going to shape out, but it's exciting.
Yeah, you got to be pretty pumped to get this out of the way with a little bit,
Absolutely, and once it does, then everything about your vertical, your arm length, everything just goes out the window, and like really the real work really begins. So like you're a football player full time, you're going to a team to take another man's job, like a grown man's job, someone with wife and kids, like, and it's pretty brutal to think of it that way, but at the end of the day, that's basically what you're doing. Like, so.
Yeah, but I mean, let me segue real quick, because I heard you bring up the All-Star game. I know you got to attend the Senior Bowl this year. You want to talk about the experience getting to go and play in that?
Yeah, so getting a chance to go down to Dallas, that was real awesome. It was the 100th edition of that All-Star game, the Shrine Game. And I mean, that was awesome. There was tons of great talent down there. We got all the Colorado guys on our team, the Shadur, and some of his receivers and teammates were on our team. He was like in for one team meeting, but he was really just there for some interviews and stuff. So he didn't actually practice or play with us, but great talent all around down there though. Trying to think of, some of the guys we had with down there. Max Brosner, Minnesota quarterback. He was, a really fantastic player and, good leader. That was awesome to play with him. Several guys in the O-line, awesome dudes, a lot of them Big Ten guys. So I think we kind of at one point put together a full, Big Ten offensive line out there in practice and in the game, which was pretty cool. And man, that was such an awesome experience. So great coaches too. And, learned a lot down there for sure.
That's great. Segueing back to you here. So you started all 12 games and you led the team with 739 offensive snaps. You've started 49 consecutive games. Clearly you're doing something right to be this durable and stay healthy, which NFL teams absolutely love. You got to be available. You got to be healthy. So that clean medical record is amazing. What are you doing to make sure that you're always ready to play?
Obviously, I think some of it comes from being in God's good graces, like obviously, it's accidental freak stuff happens in college football. And sometimes you can't, no amount of treatment or stretching can kind of prevent some of the stuff that happens to you. But in my case, I try to be an athlete. I try to move my feet, stay out of piles, like I don't do anything crazy, just making sure you're foam rolling, ice tubbing, stretching, man, that's really it for me. And like, it may not seem, like much, but it certainly has done the trick for me. And that's kind of just been my go-to kind of going throughout all this. And you'll even see me do that before you step onto a pickleball court. Like I'll stretch, I'll roll out, like literally for anything. And that's what I got to do. But yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate up to this point to, have played 49 consecutive games. Having a clean medical record in this, draft stuff is really huge. And so really grateful for that.
Let's go. That's awesome. So for the people listening that might not get this, because when you're training, like you mentioned, you went down to Florida and you're training for pro days, you're doing all this athletic testing, right? So your preparation from January up until this point is completely different when you're getting ready for the draft compared to if you were getting ready for the season in the fall. Can you just talk about the differences and how your approach changes?
Yeah. So, you're not training to be a football player at that point. You're just training for one day, one opportunity to do a handful of drills. And it's kind of crazy to think about that. So much kind of rides on just one day and one workout where maybe someone slips up or has a bad rep here and there, and it doesn't matter. Like that's it for you. Like that's what teams are going to, record you as, as having. And so I think there's a huge mental aspect to it. All my numbers from the pro day at MSU were all PRs. Like it was, a mix of, a ton of adrenaline, but I think also just the ability to perform and, in front of a crowd of people. I think there's something exciting to that. For a lot of people, it's not, it could be stressful at times, but man, I just had fun with it. Like you just remember at the end of the day, it's, you get to work out in front of a handful of scouts and coaches, man. And not many people have the opportunity to do that. So keeping that in the back of my mind really gave me a lot of confidence. And, I'll certainly say this, like, you lose the fact of, you kind of lose that football player aspect when you're doing this training. Cause like, you're not conditioning for games, you're not like, there was some position work involved that kind of kept you like, sharp, and working your fundamentals. Yeah. But like, I think the big struggle for everyone, including myself right now after that is like getting back into football shape. So I think that's what people, fail to realize is that, you're not really conditioning your body to play football. When you're doing this training, you're conditioning your body to do a pro day. And then once that's over, switch back to football. And so that's kind of been my process for the last month since.
Now, what is something NFL teams should know about bringing Luke Newman into their franchise potentially?
I love it. I think the one thing I've said on these visits and on the Zooms, I consider myself to be a very adaptable player. I've played under 4 offensive coordinators in my 5 years in college, 3 O-line coaches, handful of different playbooks, positions, all that comes with it. And a huge asset to being in the NFL and making a roster is learning how to play in multiple positions. So, when a team usually carries 8 linemen, those 3 guys, you usually need someone who plays both tackles. You need someone that snaps the ball, and you need someone that kind of plays all 3. And that's kind of where I fall under. Like I need to be able to learn right guard, center, left guard under a new playbook. That's something I did at Michigan State, learning those 3 positions for the first time, a new playbook. So, having gone through that experience beforehand, kind of tells me, this, going to this NFL, being in the NFL won't be much different, because I did it before. And I think that's something that's, big asset that I kind of carry around with me. And that's, hopefully going to pay good dividends in a couple months here.
Yeah, no more school. I mean, that's got to help too with the studying. You have to study a playbook and not the actual books.
Yeah, school is a holy cross thing. I think this year I was just really a football player. Like, I had some Zoom classes. I made sure I did my work. Boost the team GPA at the end of the semester. But man, it was just kind of cool just to kind of focus on football, and that I think that part was awesome, and certainly helped me out a bunch.
Oh no, I thought you were a student first. That's what I assumed. That football was second for you.
Oh no, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. That's
good old wink action. So you mentioned earlier you've talked to some coaches, Ben Johnson from the Bears, D'Amico Ryans from Houston. What teams have you spoken to throughout the process? And on a broad level, what do those visits, meetings, and conversations typically look like?
Yeah, so between those visits in Houston, Chicago, I've done some Zoom calls as well. New York being one of them, Indianapolis being another, and kind of what you talk about in some of those meetings is that these coaches kind of want to pick your brain as a player a little bit. Like they want to see how you see things on a football field. Like they'll pull up your film, they'll be like, okay, like what's this block called right here? Like, all right, how are you approaching this 2-eye, like how are you setting him, in a pass set? Like he just, they just kind of want to see how you think as a player and, how cerebral you can be. And that's kind of a really huge thing, especially being an interior guy and a center in my case. These coaches really just kind of want to see how you are as a person, but they also just kind of want to see how you process the game. And, they want to learn about how do you handle what kind of level of coaching or what style of coaching best suits you, what's going to progress you and, to the level that you can come on the field on Sundays and help contribute to us winning. And so, that's really it. Sometimes coaches will teach you what they do and then you just kind of reiterate it back. And you just kind of go back and forth on it and it's just talking ball, man. Like it's really cool. It's awesome to kind of delve into. And it's just kind of cool to kind of see just, how different teams process it, and will make me look at the games on Sunday a lot differently going forward.
Absolutely.
Now I got one more question for you. Who is an NFL player, and it can be a current or a former player, that you most model your game after?
So, I usually tend to look at guys who kind of fit, my similar body type. It'd be, pretty absurd to look at Lane Johnson and think, I need to play exactly like this. He's just built a different way, but, in terms of, some of the interior guys in the NFL, I've looked at Peter Skoronski for the Titans,
Yep.
Great explosive athlete, similar size in terms of height, weight, arm length. He was a transitional tackle from, into guard in the NFL. And, I made that jump in college, but he made that jump in the NFL. So to kind of watch him, handle that was pretty cool. Center wise, I always keep an eye on Tyler Linderbaum. Again, similar size. I got a little bit of height on him and weight, but similar arm length, which is obviously the huge thing. But, he's an explosive athlete as well, moves great in space. And you can just see it from these guys, man. Again, they don't lose reps because of their arm length, man. It's always just something else that coaches could fix and tweak. And, it's really just awesome to kind of see those guys being a similar, having a similar build to myself, and just they're dominating guys in the NFL, man. And man, it's awesome stuff to see.
And I got one more, actually. I said it was my last one, but I got one more. It's got to be pretty cool to see yourself in a video game, right? That had to have been pretty cool.
Yeah.
That was awesome. I think my face wasn't too far off. They got the facial hair. The hair was okay. One thing I don't agree with was the overall. That was they were 73 to start the year.
You know what? As a recurring guest, you're a 99 in our hearts.
Oh, thank you. I mean, listen, I know they don't have much respect for FCS guys, man, but I was up there with the freshmen in our room, man. I was like, oh, come on, give me at least an 80. Yeah. By the end of the year, I was a 79. I was like, okay, that's fine, but it is what it was. But again, nonetheless, it was super cool to be in that game. And they also gave me a 48 something rating for speed too.
Oh, did they see your relative athletic score? I guess not.
Clearly not. No, I think it might be too late to update it now. But I mean, man,
that's disrespectful. Disrespectful, man.
I couldn't agree more, but it is what it is.
Well, Luke, we appreciate you hopping on, man. We wish you the best of luck next weekend. We're going to be watching, dude. I mean, this is a really exciting time. So really just pumped up for you, man, and best of luck.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for having me on, and let's do this again sometime soon.
Absolutely. We'll catch you soon back here on Around the Felt Sports.